Namo Amida Buddha, 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 Namo Amida Buddha. Gasho. Namo Amida Buddha, 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 Namo Amida Buddha. Welcome once again to the Tri-State Denver Buddhist Temple's YouTube service. This is the service for November 14th, 2021. I'm so glad that you've come to join us to hear the Buddha Dharma once again. Service order for this service will be Juseige. You can find Juseige on page 57 in the Blue Denver Service Book. Following Juseige, there'll be a reading of the Metta. You can find the Metta on page 108 in the Blue Denver Service Book. We'll then have a Dharma talk. I'm going to be talking about Remembrance Day and the importance of seeing ourselves and others. Once again, we want to remind you about the upcoming Interfaith Thanksgiving Service here in Denver that will be taking place at 10 o'clock at Central Christian Church. You'll find more details down below, as well as we'll be having an upcoming sign-up, so anyone that wants to go to the service in person can sign up. If not, it'll be streamed online, and those links will be coming to YouTube and TSDBT's social media accounts, so please check those out. And also, I want to let you know that I just got my flu shot yesterday, and you should get yours too. This year's an excellent quadrivalent flu shot, and it's what you can do to keep yourself and others protected from the flu once again this year. And if you don't have a copy of the Blue Denver Service Book, don't worry. You can look in the description down below and you'll find a PDF copy in a Google Drive hyperlink so that you can download and get your own copy of the Blue Denver Service Book. So let's please do everything we can to keep each other happy, healthy, and safe going into all through November. And remember, all beings are always embraced in Amida's light. You can say the Nembutsu no matter where, when you're at. Gagon chosengan hishimu jodo shingan fumanzok seifu joshongak gahomu yoko fui dai seishu fusai shobingu seifu joshongak gashi jobundo myosho chonjipo kukyo mishomon seifu joshongak ryoku jinshonen joe shumon shigumu jodo isho tenin shi jinriki endai ko fusho musaido shoujo san kumyo kosai shuyakunan kaihi chiengen meshi konmoa 閉塞小悪道、通断全宗門、高僧上満足、異様老寺法、日願修十期、天候普賢、一種解放像、公正功徳法、上大集中、説法四式空、供養一切分、具足修徳本、元年心上満、徳意三概要、如文無下知、通断未不詳、願学営力、投資最小損、志願や国家、大戦の感動、国書天人、東珍妙見。Namo Amida Boots. Namo Amida Boots. Namo Amida Boots. Namanda 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 Boots. Please join me in Gasho for a reading of the Metta on page 108 in the Blue Denver Service Book. May all beings be happy. May they be joyous and live in safety. All living beings, whether weak or strong, in high or middle or low realms of existence, small or great, visible or invisible, near or far, born or to be born, may all beings be happy. Namo Amida Boots. Namo Amida Boots. Namo Amida Boots. Namanda Boots, Namanda Boots, Namanda Boots, Namanda Boots, Namanda Boots, Namanda Boots. Welcome once again to the Tri-State Denver Buddhist Temple. Today I'm going to give the Dharma talk for this service, November 14th, 2021. Please join me in Gassho as I read from the Dharmapada. All beings tremble before violence. All fear death. All love life. See yourself in others. Then, whom can you hurt? What harm can you do? Namo Amida Boots. Namo Amida Boots. Namo Amida Boots. Namanda Boots, Namanda Boots, Namanda Boots, Namanda Boots, Namanda Boots, Namanda. This has always been one of my favorite parts of the Dharmapada, this particular phrase. And I have to be honest, the first place I ever heard it is kind of a weird place to first hear teachings of the Buddha. The first time I ever heard it was probably from the famous Brad Pitt movie, 7 Years in Tibet, where the young Dalai Lama quotes this line. But it's always been something that stuck with me. All beings tremble before violence. All fear death. All love life. And the reason that I chose this today is even though this service will air on November 14th, I'm recording it today on November 11th, 2021. And November 11th is an important day across a majority of the world. In Commonwealth countries, so Canada, the United Kingdom, Northern Ireland, India, Australia, New Zealand, in so many other places the British Crown reached, whether wanted or unwanted, this is a day that they celebrate the end of World War I, the end of the war to end all wars. In the United States, this is Veterans Day, although at one point it was also known as Armistice Day, and has kind of evolved. It was post-Korea that it became Veterans Day because we seem to have fought so many wars. But on this day in Canada, where I lived for several years, I lived in Kingston, Ontario for a while, I learned about a tradition. And that tradition is this week, the week of the week of Remembrance Day, everybody puts on a poppy. And this isn't the same one I wear in Canada, but this is one like it. And it's a red poppy I've got here on my wagesa. And there's a saying that's said often in Canada on this day, and often in the United Kingdom. And I know I have a lot of Australian friends, and they tell me that this is very big in Australia, and that saying is, lest we forget. Lest we forget. And lest we forget comes, and the poppy tradition comes from two different poets. So first I'm going to talk about the poppies for a second. The poppy tradition on Armistice Day came from a poem written by a gentleman named John McCree, Lieutenant Colonel John McCree, Royal Canadian Army. He was a doctor. He was a surgeon. And he wrote a poem called At Flanders Field. And it's pretty long, so I'm not going to read it today. But I do recommend that if you get a chance, look up At Flanders Field. It's not a happy poem. In fact, nothing John McCree ever wrote was happy. It was quite rough because he lived in a hellscape in the trenches in World War I trying to take care of people. In fact, he died in 1918 as the commanding officer of a field hospital by contracting pneumonia and was said to have kept working until the moment he died. And Lieutenant Colonel John McCree, Royal Canadian Army, Dr. McCree, noted in 1916 when looking at the fields, the graves at Flanders Field in Ypres in France, how rapidly the poppies grew on the graves of these young people, of these young men, how in their death new life was born, and how the poppies swayed in the wind. This imagery has continued on for over 100 years and is what started the wearing of poppies by those in Commonwealth countries. And so I have always felt like this is a really important tradition, in that it reminds us that we are all impermanent beings, and that we will all face sadness and death, and that we can really, really, really harm each other. We can really, really change the face of the world. World War I was called the war that ends all wars. Fought in the trenches of Europe, fought on the shores of China, fought all over the world, and yet with people who didn't even live anywhere near where the conflict was happening, and yet it affected the entire world. And on this day, November 11th, was the day that it ended. It was the day the armistice happened. And World War I's also interesting because you have a lot of stories that come out of it, like the soldiers who called a Christmas truce and played soccer in no man's land. The fact that all people are human, and even though they were shooting each other, in the end they were just as scared and just as forlorn as the people shooting at them. And so this, I think, comes from that saying, lest we forget, lest we forget. And there's another poem I'm going to read at the end of the Dharma talk that lest we forget is a large part of. So stepping out a little bit, I come from a military family. Many, many members of my family have served in the military. So my great-grandfather, my grandfather, my great-uncle all served in World War II. In fact, I remember a funny story of my great-uncle telling me how he got wounded in the posterior and made it out of the Battle of the Bulge, and how he was very lucky that he caught a bullet in the posterior. My father, my cousins, my father-in-law, all of them serving both in peacetime, all of them serving in peacetime and in wartime. And it's easy for us to forget the sacrifice that was made by so many for the beliefs of the culture that we live in today. We also think about members of the 442, of those who were placed in concentration camps that make up so many members of our Sangha, and yet still put on a uniform and protected those who were wrongfully imprisoned. And on this day, we should not forget those people, lest we forget. But at the same time, we have to understand the nature of conflict. And it's really easy for us to look at the world as black and white, good and evil, the right way and the wrong way. And if there's one thing the teaching of Shinran Shonin has taught us, if there's one thing that the Nembutsu has taught us, is all people are welcome in the Nembutsu. All people are welcome in this teaching. All people can be Jodo Shinshu. There is no right and wrong person, because all people are the right people for the vow. And so as we go together and think, lest we forget, we think about the Dharmapada. All beings tremble before violence, all fear death, all love life. See yourself in others. See yourself in others. And this is something that I think is extremely important for us to remember going forward. We have conflicts that keep happening, brush fire wars. My friends fought in Iraq. My friends fought in Afghanistan. I talked last night to a friend of mine who's deployed multiple times to fight in wars overseas, and the pain that I see in his eyes is palpable. We have Sangha members right now deployed across the world to preserve what we desire as our type of lifestyle. It is easy as a Buddhist to say, we are nonviolent. It is easy as a Buddhist to say, we are non-confrontational. But it is hard to look at ourselves in the mirrors as Buddhists and realize we are not those things. We are human beings first. And it is through the Dharma and it is through Buddhism that we are trying to move away from harming others. However, we are not enlightened beings. We are not the Buddha. We are the target of the Buddha's teachings. And so we live in this everyday world. We live in a world full of greed, anger, and ignorance. We live in a world where war happens and violence occurs on the regular. And so it is up to us now, as people who feel most likely pretty righteous in how we exist. I doubt many of us wake up in the morning and think ourselves, hey, you know what? We're the bad guy in someone's story. We're the person that's hurting or ruining someone else's day. We're the person who is the evil villain in someone else's novel. And yet, we all are. We are all someone's nemesis. Not because we mean to be, but because we are. We're human beings, and we influence people in ways that we don't mean to or don't want to. There's definitely someone out there who, when they think of you, they're like, ugh, really? And so when we think of ourselves as those that are bathed in Amida's light, we have to think of the people who we think of as our nemesis, also bathed in Amida's light. We have to see them as our brothers and sisters in the Dharma. There is no one who is outside of this teaching. There is no one who doesn't deserve to be embraced in this teaching. And there is no one who is not our brother and sister in the Dharma. See ourselves in others. See ourselves in others. And so on this Remembrance Day, I want us all to remember we are all human and we all tremble. We are all sad and we are all lonely. Do not allow ourselves to think that we are ever righteous more than any other living being. We are just alive, fumbling around in the dark in a path not illuminated by us, but rather for us. All beings tremble before violence. All fear death. All love life. See yourself in others. Then, whom can you hurt? What harm can you do? See yourself in everyone that you look around. Remember that those that have come before us have done much to create the environment we're in today and the goodness that we have and that we are able to do. And remember the causes and conditions that have brought us to this moment today. Remember those who have worked hard for us and be grateful. But most of all, embrace those who oppose you. And remember that they are also in Amida's light. So the second poem that is read, especially in Canada, especially in Australia, especially in New Zealand, is called Ode to Remembrance. I'm going to read it today to close out today's service. And remember of all those that have come before us, all those who have died in violence, and all those who are all completely bathed in Amida's light, our brothers and sisters in Dharma, no matter what they've done or what has been done in their name. Remember that no matter who a person is, they can be fully embraced by the Nembutsu, and they will be born just as us, in the Pure Land of Amida Buddha. They shall not grow old as we are. Oh, I'm sorry, I read that wrong. Let's try again. They shall not grow old as we that are left to grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn them. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them, lest we forget. Lest we forget that we are all, always in Amida's light. Please join me in Gasho. Namo Amida Boots. Namo Amida Boots. Namo Amida Boots. Namanda Boots, Namanda Boots, Namanda Boots, Namanda Boots, Namanda Boots, Namanda.